Today on the show, we have Sam Davidson. Sam, thanks for being here.
Hey, you bet, Mark. Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to talk.
Yeah, Sam, so I want people to know a little bit more about you. So, can you tell us two things about you personally, two things professionally, and why it matters to our audience?
You bet. So we'll start professional, if that's okay. Maybe we'll weave them in and out. I don't know. But professionally, for the last 19 years now, entrepreneurship has been my canvas, my ocean, my whatever, my setting. 17 of those years, I was an entrepreneur myself, started four different small businesses in Nashville, Tennessee, where I grew up. And for the last two now, I've been running the Entrepreneur Center, which is a 15-year-old nonprofit organization in the heart of Nashville dedicated to helping people start and grow businesses. So that's the language I speak. It's the world I live in, is this taking an idea and turning it into reality and seeing where it goes. The other thing professionally, part of those 17 years, and still to a good extent, I've spoken professionally. And so that started way back when I was in high school, very active in my church youth group. So first got the chance to speak or preach publicly when I was 16 years old, and enjoyed that and got a chance to do that, and then sort of transitioned from preaching. I didn't go into the ministry, but then transitioned that to be a professional speaker and talk about entrepreneurship or help people, lead people through workshops, and get to keynote college conferences and others to talk to them about innovation, entrepreneurship, and community. And I still do that a little bit, but just not like I was maybe a decade ago. And then personally, man, I have three kids. Sometimes it feels like 30, but that's a lot of what people are like. Do you have any hobbies? And I was like, well, if a hobby is something you spend all your time and money on outside of work, then yes, I have three. And so love them, love raising them with my wife here in Nashville. And then the other is I love to read. And so again, usually there's a professional benefit to that. I like to read business books and books about entrepreneurship and business growth, but always reading something in order to be occupied. I guess that is a hobby with what very little time I have left over, but also then how can I apply it either personally or professionally? So glad to be talking with an author for that reason.
Thanks, Sam. It's good
Mhm.
to see that your history started and you understood it at a young age.
Mm.
But what I'm hearing you say is also you're still continuing to learn. So just because
Oh,
you
yeah.
were confident in learning, you're not 16 anymore and you're still leaning into this.
Yeah, I
So,
think, learning in general should be lifelong. I don't know. And hopefully none of us think that, oh, I went to high school, college, whatever. I learned everything I need for the next 80 years or however long you're lucky enough to live. We teach the same thing to our entrepreneurs. We offer a 12-week accelerator, but we are very deliberate on reminding them that you're going to learn a lot in these 12 weeks, business basics and marketing, and how to grow a team, but then you got to go do it. You got to go apply it. And so you've got to keep learning, and each new opportunity or obstacle is going to teach you something new and how you overcome it.
yeah, it's learning and application. Yeah. So, knowledge is in power. Applied knowledge is power. People forget that because,
I
just
like
learning
that.
about
Yeah.
something. Yeah, it's because if knowledge was power, we'd all be powerful just because we had an iPhone and we're like, I can Google anything or chat GPT it. I was like, what are you going to do with that? You're like, oh, that's the tough part, execution. Even though you learn and you want to know more and you've done so many things, you have yeah buts, I hear.
Yeah, you made me. No, of course. And I think we wouldn't be authentic. We wouldn't be human. We wouldn't be, fully ourselves if we didn't have some of these. I mean, I love
Hmm.
that as many as you've got in your book. The kudos to you is that you lay these out for people, because I think some of us who seem like we've accomplished something. You mentioned imposter syndrome in one of these, which we can talk about. But it's easy to think like, no, I'm doing pretty good. But then when you get to read your book and you're like, for example, I don't know where to start. So that idea, I think, can haunt any entrepreneur, but it can prevent any entrepreneur from existing, from taking shape. And so I think that's one of the critical things that we hit on every day, but that I always remind myself is that I've started before.
Hmm.
Yeah, but I don't know where to start. I don't know. Do I need to like get a group together? Should I call a committee together? Do I need to call my mentor? Should I ask an expert friend? Should I get a business license? Should I build a website? So, like, it can seem like a lot of what to do first. And so overcoming that, yeah, but I don't know where to start, just making a step, taking one step, you break through that inertia of inactivity that prevents your idea from getting out there. And I think so many good ideas stay in people's heads because they say, yeah, but I don't know where to start.
And you work with people on that, because even I have problems with, ideation's easy, execution is tough. Don't people have more options for help than they even recognize,
Oh,
though?
of course. So according to SCORE, which is a great nationwide mentor organization for business owners, 80% of business owners, entrepreneurs that get a mentor experience revenue growth within the next quarter. So that's all the data I need to say, like, let me get a mentor, let me get somebody to tell me their story or to invest in me, because I'll make more money. And whether you pay for that or, again, at the EC, that comes with our how we do membership here, is you get access to about 150 volunteer advisors and mentors, because it's so critical. And again, we don't have to be talking about starting a business. If you're a new parent, you can get someone who's been a parent before to sort of invest in you and pour into you and help you through that new process. But when it comes to the business piece, and you mentioned this in that chapter about just this idea of the MVP, the minimum viable product, because we can sometimes have an idea of where we're going and we see the finish line and either this big company or this very profitable endeavor, even if it's a small workforce, whatever it is. And we're like, that's what I want. If I can't have that, I don't want anything else. But we don't realize how many steps we have to take just to start to get there.
In the value is getting a product out there, right? I mean, that's why I talk about MVP, and people think, well, my thing isn't a product. I was like, well, everything's something that's going to have a transaction with someone else, even if it's a dialogue, right? Even your speeches early on were a product, right? You were selling to an audience. You wanted to keep them awake. You want to have dialogue with them. So I think people think a product is a certain thing because they see marketed. They're like, well, it has a code, a barcode. And I was like, no. So tell us more about how people misunderstand what they're really trying to do, and they think it's a product or it's not.
Yeah, and so say it's an app or it's a service, and you're right, because it's not a thing I can touch. Is it a product? I don't need a prototype. I don't have to go to a factory to get a die cut, and or even like a barbecue sauce. One of my previous companies was in the consumer product space, so worked with physical products, both snacks and kind of home goods. And so it's easy to think like, if it's a cookie, then I've got to make that. But if it's a service that teaches people how to cook, well, then it's not a product. You're exactly right. But a couple things that I advise people is, maybe the minimum viable product is not something you can show somebody, but it's something you can show and tell from grade school. Because as an entrepreneur, until you get big enough, you are the chief salesperson. You have to convince, whether it's an investor, a customer, an employee, a partner, that what you're doing is going to work. So you're in the sales business, whether you like it or not. And so the more you can articulate, hey, here's what I want to do. I want to open, for example, one of the companies opened was a services business. So we want to help cause-based organizations, nonprofits, and schools better hone their brand, get it out into the marketplace of crowded ideas, because those ideas are equally as important as an app or a shoe or whatever else. We didn't think it was fair that the biggest companies in the world took up all the attention when so many causes needed that same attention. So being able to have it like that is the minimum viable product. And once you can get somebody to use that service, now you're cooking. Now you've got the start of a business underway.
And that's what I try to remind people all the time, is to be like, you already have something. You've done more than you thought. Because even thinking it through, but it's the most difficult that I've seen is getting out of people's heads and actually written down, especially ideators. They're like, well, I know what it means and I know what it's about. How do we get this idea out of people's heads in a way where they have to actually explain it without words to someone else?
Yeah, I mean, there's several frameworks. I mean, you kind of do this at the end of each of your chapters, where you've got these butt busters, which I like the title of, and you have blanks that people fill in, because there's power even in our digital world where so much is typed or texted. There's still something about how our body's wired that when we put pen to paper or write something down physically, we remember it better and we can articulate it better, because it forces our mind to slow and focus on the word. So we can, I don't know the exact stats, but we probably type twice, 4 times as fast as we physically write. And we can think 1,000,000 times faster than we can type. So this forces you to articulate. I find it here with my own team here at the Entrepreneur Center. I've got an idea, something new we should do, something different we should do. I could bloviate, pontificate about it forever. But at the end of it, if my team's like, what are we doing? Is this a new thing? Whereas if I'm like, you know what? Let me send you guys an email. If I can articulate it, if I can draw it out on the board, then that helps me understand it. And again, whoever it was like, unless you can write it, then you may not even understand it yourself. And so I think that's some of the benefit to doing that, of just finding space, man, waiting in line, stuck in traffic. This doesn't have to be a big writing room or anything formal, but just to say, can I articulate this in writing? And then that'll help you. Sometimes it'll help you, again, this hits on a lot of your themes, it'll help you get rid of your own excuses.
Right. And a lot of them are in our heads. So I think you mentioned that you didn't just have one but there might have been others.
Yeah, a little bit, so to speak. So the I'm not qualified, this is where we can talk about imposter syndrome a little bit. One thing that I like to mention when I address like any new cohort of ours, especially if this is their first business, I said, all right, who here has, already incorporated LLC or an S Corp or whatever? And some people raise their hand. I'm like, all right, did you guys make sure if you're doing business in Tennessee, you've got your tax set up. Okay, yeah, I've done that. Got registered with the state. Cool. Did you go down to the city hall and did you get your entrepreneur's permit? And they're like, what? Oh man, this, because again, you don't need anybody's permission to be an entrepreneur. You can have any idea and get started. There's no such thing. By the way, if any listener is like, oh crap, I didn't get my entrepreneur, there is no such thing. No city issues those. And to me, but that's the power of it. Again, if you're in a regulated industry, you do have permitting and everything, of course, but just to be an entrepreneur. And so what that should get rid of is all this, like, I don't have an MBA. I haven't worked in corporate America for 2 years, 5 years, 20 years. That qualification goes out the window. You mentioned Joy, can't think of her last name. I've seen the movie about her with Jennifer Lawrence, but this mother who started this product company, went on Home Shopping Network, grew it to a big idea. No, what we would call qualifications on paper. Doesn't matter. And so that's where the imposter syndrome creeps in. When I stepped into this job almost 2 years ago, it was the first time in 17 years that I was working a job I hadn't created for myself. And so even though I'd gone through a hiring process, a hiring committee, the board of directors, search firm, et cetera, I'd earned it. But like, God, why do they think I can come in here and just like, this thing's already going? So I had to get out of my own way to say like, yeah, but I'm not qualified. It's like, no, I am. Here's the story that I've done. And back to our continual learning, like there's still things I got to learn in this role and I'm still learning. And so that's how I can kind of get rid of that but, I think, is like, if there's something I think I'm not qualified to do, I add the word yet. And I probably would add the word yet on any and all of these buts. It's like, yeah, I'm not qualified yet. And so there's some of those that immediately when we identify that, then we can go get rid of the but and we get rid of the yet, because then we land on we are qualified.
Yeah, that's great. And thank you for reiterating that in a way where I think imposter syndrome, and there's a lot of great books, actually some even written locally by some of our friends that have written about that. John Anderson in his book, and just other people that have written about imposter syndrome. And I think people are unaware of how pervasive it is. But even if you didn't have a name for it, I think what I'm hearing from you and what I hear from a lot of other people is just all the reasons why we can't do it versus what happens if we could, or how about if we could do it and somebody sees it and then they say, let's collaborate. And they didn't even know you were trying to do something. I think when we keep things in the dark and we keep them from others, we actually rob the world of collaboration and community and maybe even what we were created to do, but we didn't believe it enough. So you've spoken about, doing your own business, and how is this transition from going from something that you started and you had control of completely to something where it had legacy staff and there's other things going on and you're coming in, and no matter how great the person was before you, there's still things that you add to it. So let's talk about that for a moment.
Yeah. Some of that, and again, you only know these things in reverse. Everything again. I'm great at hearing quotes and repeating like 80% of them, but forgetting where I heard them. But basically, the idea that we see somebody's resume and they're like, "God, man, look at how you did this, so perfectly planned out." But the person is like, "What are you talking about, dude? I was flying by the seat of my pants through this," and it just looks like, because in retrospect, you can connect the dots, but you can never do it going forward. So I sold my fourth startup. I sold a majority stake of that back in 2022. And some of that was just where the business had gone and grown, and there were some exciting sort of new things, new challenges for me. But it kind of prepared me to step out of that. Didn't have any plans to do that at the time. Was still CEO, still had a small ownership stake, still driving the vision. So over that roughly year and change, I was getting experience in saying, like, I'm not fully in control. I report to a board now. And so that prepared me for now this role where I report to a board. But this situation didn't create that. So there's still those learning curves, those learning moments to your piece about community. And my third, not to get ahead of ourselves, but a third yeah, but is the yeah, but I need help. Mm-hmm. I had friends who were nonprofit leaders, who are nonprofit leaders, but the ways in which I've leaned into them in this role has been sort of outsized, I guess. And so I've got a handful of folks who are leading different nonprofit organizations that I can go to, whether it is about board management and leadership, staff strategy, fundraising, all these things that are unique to our sector. I've got people on speed dial when I need to ask that question. I attended a workshop about 6, maybe 8 months ago on strategic planning because we were working on a strategic plan. So there's those elements where it's like I want to be hungry on that and learn those things. I don't talk to anybody about entrepreneurship. People call me for that frequently, but nobody's calling me yet for nonprofit management advice, which is okay. I still need to get a lot myself.
I think it's even more exciting to learn by doing versus having already done everything, or at least thinking you have. It's even with this book, and I know you've written one a little while back, but it's like you can hand this off to somebody and they can do everything for you. But I don't think there's any learning in that, right? Like I kind of like getting dirty and having to market it and understand it and figuring it out and doing things wrong and dealing with, like, there's something about doing that, but isn't that what entrepreneurship's about? Is that if you just handed it off, you'd be like, well, that wasn't any fun.
Yeah, and there's some of that. I was moderating a panel last night where there were 3 entrepreneurs and they were asked about, like, what's your exit plan? What's your exit strategy? And each one had one, but their time horizon was different. So eventually they did want to hand it off, but after hitting some key milestones, and some of that was based on age, some of that was based on they'd done it before, some of that was based on they've come to the realization real quick they're limited. Upside is limited because it's a crowded industry or competitive industry or whatever. Great, fine. And so at some point you do want to hand things off, and some entrepreneurs, that's what they do. They create something, they hand it off, they sell it like every year. But still within that, if you talk to them, they're learning, they're facing challenges, and they're also not batting 1,000. So they've got their own success metrics and challenges and everything within that. The doing piece, to me, that's what the most exciting thing about entrepreneurship is. When I talk about entrepreneurship, I take this from Jeff Cornwall, who's a retired Belmont professor, but he notes that the word entrepreneur or entrepreneurship, there is no verb. So painters paint, writers write, leaders lead, but entrepreneurs, there is no verb. And it's very interesting, just to get wonky a little bit, because this isn't my sort of my canned entrepreneur talk. It's a 17th century or 18th century French word that means to undertake. It's actually also what the word undertaker comes from. And it's really centered around risk. And so entrepreneurs are risk takers. But the cool thing about entrepreneurship is that entrepreneurs paint and write and manage and lead and drive and build and you name it. And so that's the cool thing, is that it's cross-industry, cross-disciplinary. So if you're an artist, most likely you're going to be an entrepreneur. How many, our town of Nashville, how many songwriters, musicians, we call them solopreneurs, but preneur is still in there. So they are their own business. So it's so critical that people are out doing things, trying things. I think that's what is at the heart of it, that you don't just want to sit there and look at spreadsheets all day and tell people what to do. You want to be in the middle of it, doing stuff.
Hey there, it's time for a quick break. While we're diving into how to live, learn, and lead better, I wanted to let you in on something I'm really excited about. If you've ever found yourself stuck in the yeah, but cycle, those moments where excuses get in your way of your potential, my new book, Yeah, But, cut through the noise to live, learn, and lead better is for you. The book is packed with practical strategies, real stories, and actionable advice to help you stop making excuses and start making progress. Whether you're a leader, a learner, or just someone looking to cut through the noise, Yeah But has something for you. And here's the best part. For a limited time, you can grab a chapter for free. Just head over to my website at www.markawolf.com/book to get started. Readers have already said that the perspective and stories guided them to get unstuck and move forward. All right, let's get back to the show and dive into more ways to break through those yeah but moments. Yeah, it's great. And you mentioned this, and let's circle back to the help thing. So it's even if you're a solopreneur, it doesn't matter how big your business is, you're going to want help.
You have to have help. And I think help, when I was reading your chapter, I thought about it in a couple different ways. And obviously, we were talking earlier, Norman Woodland, the barcode guy, the UPC code guy. I mean, I love stories about that, where if I probably just look around my office, a countless UPC code on a book, on a snack pack of almonds over here. But I had to start somewhere. And the fact it's not even 100 years old, that also blows my mind. But he couldn't do it alone. And so I think when you're asking for help, there's three tiers to look at it as. One is equal, which is, I think, kind of Norman's story. Is he found somebody who was a subject matter expert, but sort of on par with him. And then I think you are asking up or ahead. Sometimes we think of up of like, oh, I'm a VP, let me ask a president. I would tell somebody, don't worry about the titles, look at the longevity. And so back to my nonprofit friends, I'm like, who is 2 years ahead of me? Who's 10 years ahead of me? And if I got people in each of those camps, then I've got kind of a place that I'm shooting for, and their wisdom, their knowledge, their experience. And then I think, because you're going to get help from both of those, you have an obligation to then who's below or behind. And so who is 2 years behind you or 10 years behind you? If they ask you, you got to say yes, man, because you're asking people and they're saying yes. So it's just how it has to work. And so hopefully anybody is able to be that help. What'll surprise you, the second business I started was with a guy. I'm actually just having to be having lunch with him later today as we catch up. He's like 8 years. No, he's more than that. He's I don't know. He's a lot younger than me. And when we started the business, he was this young, like, go-getter. And I was like, great. It was a marketing services firm. The first one I started, he was going to do all the coding, the website building. I was on the strategy, the comms, and great partnership. But he was just this young 20-something dude, had a ton of energy. And by default, I was teaching him a lot about a lot of things I didn't even know and think about it at the time. But I thought, I was just going to offer some advice. We ended up starting a company together and growing it, and he's still running it. And so you never know when you do say yes to someone behind you, when it's going to be a fruitful partnership, and you end up learning too. So that's that community piece you mentioned earlier. We've got to have that, because maybe you create a great, viable, profitable company. Awesome. But most likely, no matter what, you're going to get a great friendship, relationship, community, something that's going to grow that, which we also just all need fundamentally, no matter what we do for a living.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. It's good to see how passionate you are about not just learning for yourself, but sharing it with others. And one of the resources that I do, especially when I do keynotes, is I tell people in the audience, I was like, take your age and cut it in half. And what would you have told yourself at that age? And most people think about that and go, oh, so my 20-year-old self, or I was like, oh, right. So you've got half your life you've learned past that. You should be going back. And some people aren't formal mentors, but there's still people that are out there that admire you, because we're in a world where so many people see you, even if you're not on social media, they just see you at the shopping center, and they see what's going on, or they see the success of your business, and they have questions and they admire it. But you also want to show them the bumps you had, the bruises, what you did. And not everybody gets to be part of an entrepreneur center. I know you want thousands of businesses to come through in Nashville, but some people, for a lot of reasons, don't. I think we all have that opportunity, like you've done in the past, where even if you're not part of an organization, you're still working with others. And
working with others, absolutely. And I think you have this nice distinction in the book between mentors and advisors. And I think that's good for anybody. Again, whatever you need them for. We approach it similarly here. We have a lot of entrepreneurs who, the example you give is like a math problem. An advisor tells you the answer, the mentor sort of helps you find a solution. And I like that distinction, because we have a lot of entrepreneurs who say, like, I have this problem. I've never hired salesperson before, what should I ask them in an interview? An advisor will tell you, here's great questions, here's what you can learn, good luck. Whereas a mentor will usually spend more time with you, and you're going to have other questions. So we have entrepreneurs who are like, I have this problem, help me solve it. But then they're also like, I'm on this journey, help guide me, because the entrepreneurial journey. And so we unofficially distinguish our mentors between subject matter experts who can help people through a problem, and then experienced entrepreneurs who can share a lot more of that story, the bumps and the bruises, as you mentioned, the ups and downs, because you need to hear that. You need to be, I'm not the only crazy one. I'm not the only, in a world where all of the positive stuff is on social media all the time, it makes you think when you have a bad day, you're like, well, no one else is failing. And like, dude, they're failing all the time. Of course they're not publishing that on the most curated, most edited platforms we've ever seen as a species. Of course they're not. And so to be able to sit with somebody, and also peer-to-peer, again, back to that equal footing thing, we see so many people who want to come through our doors because they're like, great, I'm in a cohort of 30, or I'm in a small group of 5. And that's where they do talk about like, God, that meeting I blew it. I didn't get the deal. I talked too much and didn't listen enough, whatever it is. They can help identify that. Everybody's like, cool, dude, dust yourself off. Like take the meeting tomorrow and see what happens. Now, you know.
This is great advice. And I even can't hear it enough, right? So it doesn't matter how long you've been in business. It's so reassuring to hear it from others. And that's the part of community that I think is so valuable. You and I have met in person multiple times, and we've met at events, and there's just something about presence, about being in person. It's not just because you're older than 30 that you think it's important. I think that people sometimes undervalue just being around others, that there's just an ability to really connect on a different level and see things. So
yeah, and more and more, it's so convenient to not meet because of probably every that is in your book, but especially for a younger generation. I'll digress real quick, but during COVID, my business doubled, and so people are like, "Oh, did you get all this loan and relief and blah blah blah?" I'm like, "No, we didn't qualify because our business grew." Again, great problem to have. I'm not complaining, and that's eventually what led to our sale. But about the second year into COVID, I was exhausted. And I was like, well, I am working more because I was at home more. Like I didn't have a commute, blah, blah, blah. And I needed to work more because we were growing, but I was exhausted because I wasn't getting, like, just you and I met. I think maybe I don't know if it was first at a tech council party or something. Like those things didn't exist. And I thrive on those. When I would travel to whatever city and either meet new people or connect with speaker friends, the number of times I met with a buddy on we haven't had the same layover somewhere. Like you just didn't have those. You didn't have yeah, man, let's meet for coffee. And that's community. The lack of in-person community was exhausting me. I was around my family. We got to go into our warehouse. So I was around our team with some frequency. So I still had humanity around me, but it was that. And so I started talking about our need for community. And what you're seeing a lot of is, yes, younger generations that's eternally connected digitally are the loneliest generations. There's deep psychological effects we're only beginning to learn. We blame it on the phone. And the phone can do a lot of dangerous things, but it's because it's temptation toward isolation. You can
get from here to Tokyo and never talk to another human being. You check in for your flight, you can get on, you can get in a car, you can check in the hotel, and that didn't used to be the case. You always kind of had these forced interactions where you would have to say hello and be nice to somebody. And so I do worry about my kids and pushing them to that. I kind of have a rule of thumb. If they want to do something in person with a friend, hey, can you take me to so-and-so's house? I drop what I'm doing and I say yes. Because it's easy for, especially my teenager, to communicate via the phone, even if they're looking at each other without just like the time you wasted at a mall or an arcade or walking around the neighborhood. We as parents got to push that more because we need it, man. We're desperate for it. And so the companies that lean into that are going to succeed. So that's my little digression about community, just from a psychological, biological standpoint. We're in danger. And the last thing I'll just say is because there's extreme health effects. Loneliness, it has been documented as a comorbidity. It's greater than cigarette smoking. It's greater than chronic obesity. So people are dying of loneliness and can't take a pill for it. I can't medicate. I can't give you an IV. I got to get you out there around people, around that community more and more.
And thank you for that as well, because I think we only look at as a society of what's going well, and we don't want to work on what's not going well, and that's why the yeah buts. It's like if the book wouldn't be written if everybody was like, well, that's just the way things are. Let's go and do it anyhow. I mean, like there
Yeah.
wouldn't be a book because people would be like, Mark, what are you talking about? We're just so positive. We just make things happen. Like nobody says that. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, well,
Yeah.
I guess the people that I heard saying it were so. Sam, as we kind of wrap up, what are some of the other things that you want to share and we're going to have contact information and other things in the show notes so people can reach out, but what else do we want to talk about as we wrap up?
One, I mean, if obviously from a day job standpoint, if anybody's thinking about starting a business, man, reach out to us. Our website's ec.co. You can find me on there. I'm happy to chat. I love, it's not necessarily like regimented, but I'm averaging like one founder conversation a day, just because I'm not in it right now. And so I like to hear about whether it's the macro level, at the city level, like what's affecting your business, where you at. Love having those conversations. But to prove that, but I need help, like let's overcome that. Let's overcome that, but, and we can do that kind of with the framework that we use. I think for anybody else though, just generally listening, reading the book, I'll remind folks of that yet piece, like adding yet onto every single one of your chapter headings can give a little bit of hope. It's not automatic. Just because you add a yet, you're like, okay, I'm great. You got work to do. And again, you give people homework in every chapter, love it. But to think of it like that, and even if they don't line up with one of your yeah buts, just a reminder, like you still got one. You still probably have several. And it may not be in this business professional setting. I think about the number of yeah buts we all probably have in our friendships, in our relationships with our kids, with our partners, with our parents, of how many, oh yeah, I would do wonder how he's doing. Yeah, but he's busy. I shouldn't text him. I shouldn't call him. I've never had anybody mad because I've checked in, texted, or called them. And that's sometimes all it takes to keep these relationships going. And so my encouragement is also, as people read this book, you of course anchor it very well in professional settings and work settings and growth settings. But I would also challenge folks to say, as they're especially filling out the end of chapter prompts, like where also might this be true in your personal life? Because we do, and appropriately so, I get it, the world we live in, we place a lot of stock and importance on satisfaction at work. But especially with our young people, is like, dude, it's okay if a job is how you pay your bills and eat. And the most rewarding thing you do on a weekly basis is outside of that 9 to 5, because you're so rooted in family or community or a sports league or a church or whatever. And so where you get stressed, where you burn out, is when you don't have anything to look forward to. And we don't want that. So that's the only other encouragement is just for folks as they read this and flip through this, is to see, man, how can I make my personal relationships better and more fruitful in addition to what I'm doing at work? And I think the book's set up to help them do that.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's
Sure.
Yeah, I think I remind people some of their biggest accomplishments are why they work, right? Not just for their job, but who they work for, how they're led. But I didn't want this to be a self-help book that was just about like what touchy-feely. I was like, I'm a business coach, I'm an advisor, I'm a consultant. And I know you have other things, but I wanted to approach it just kind of the way with you're doing this. But thank you for bringing that up, because that's always what's the whole bigger purpose of why you even do what you do.
Yeah,
so
agreed. No, and I think that's where, as people are growing in their career, I tend to sort of look at things in seasons. And again, the older you get, the more kind of perspective you have. But I remind so many people, especially if they're entering a season of parenthood or entrepreneurship or growth or hey, you know what, I'm not working for myself right now. I'm in a season where we had so many entrepreneurs I worked with in my prior company, and a couple that said, yeah, man, I got out, I stopped chasing that because I needed health insurance. And I would say, great call. I think sometimes we lament, it's like, oh, that business closed. But I know businesses that closed well, that ended well, and like you finished the race. Just because it didn't end in an IPO doesn't mean you lost. So anyway, digression there. But just this idea of finding those things that matter and leaning into them, even if they're hard. I think easy and meaningful are opposites. Usually the things that are easiest for us don't carry long-term meaning. It's those things that we had to overcome, that we worked for, that we earned. personally or professionally, that we derive the most meaning from. And so leaning into that, using your book as a guide to help folks overcome their own excuses, to lean into those more wherever they find them, I think they'll be time well spent.
Well, Sam, always a pleasure talking to you, and
brother.
I love how you frame things and how much you're helping, and may the book and our conversations reach people that need to have ears to hear. Thank you for listening to the Yeah But podcast. If today's episode provided valuable perspective on how to overcome the excuses that can hold you back, let us know in the comments. Remember, it's not about the yeah buts. It's about finding ways to live, learn, and lead better every day. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could use a little kick to get past their yeah buts. And don't forget to follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And for even more tips, connect with me at markawolf.com/podcast or on LinkedIn. Until next time, keep challenging those excuses and keep moving forward.